Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into the petrochemical industry, a world where a single decision can mean billions of dollars and decades of commitment. We're going to see how leaders make these incredibly high-stakes calls in one of the most volatile markets on the entire planet. And this quote, it just nails it, doesn't it? This is really the heart of the matter. You're in an industry with razor-thin margins, where one single bad assumption, one mistimed investment doesn't just hurt, it can sink a multi-billion-dollar project. It is a genuine high-wire act for any leadership team out there.
So how do you do it, right? How do you navigate all that complexity? Well, the secret is a rigorous, structured process that's designed to turn all that chaos into absolute clarity. And today, we're going to follow that journey step by step.
So here's our roadmap. We're going to follow the path of a strategic analyst. We'll start in the chaos, then build a solid data foundation. Learn to tell a story with that data, quantify what's really driving the market, model the future, and finally, land on that data-driven decision.
Okay, first things first. Before our analysts can find any answers, they have to get their arms around the sheer scale of the challenge. They have to truly understand this incredibly complex market where things like feedstock prices, global demand, and supply chains are constantly, and I mean constantly, in flux.
Now look, these aren't just buzzwords on a PowerPoint slide. Each one of these is a powerful force that can literally make or break a company. Just try to imagine planning a 10-year project when the price of your main ingredient can swing wildly from one month to the next. That's the everyday reality here.
So with all that chaos swirling around, where do you even start? Well, funny enough, you don't start by looking out at the market. You start by looking in the mirror. The very first step is to build a clear, data-backed baseline of your own company's performance. You have to know exactly where you stand before you can figure out where you're going to go.
They'll start with what we call key performance indicators, or KPIs, and a really crucial one is utilization. This simple percentage tells you how efficiently your multi-million, maybe even billion-dollar plant is actually running. It's a direct line to your profitability. Basically, are you getting every drop of value out of that massive thing you built?
And now, watch this. This is where it gets interesting. By benchmarking their plant against the industry average, the data suddenly tells a really powerful story. That 3% gap? That's not just a number on a page. That is a tangible, multi-million-dollar opportunity. For a big plant, closing that gap could mean an extra $50 million in profit every single year. That is the kind of number that makes executives sit up and pay attention.
Okay, so our analyst has the raw data. They've found a huge opportunity. But here's the reality check. The folks in the C-suite do not have time to dig through endless spreadsheets. So the next absolutely critical task is to distill all of that data into a powerful and super concise one-slide story.
And to do that, they use a very specific toolkit to build that narrative. It's not about random charts. There's a logic. First, pivot charts help you spot the big picture trends. Then, a waterfall chart lets you break down performance to see exactly where your profits are coming from or where they're leaking away. And finally, a tornado chart is amazing for pinpointing the biggest risks to your bottom line.
And this leads us perfectly to the next phase, because, having great visuals that show what is happening is fantastic, but the very next question out of any sharp executive's mouth is going to be, why? Why is this happening? To answer that, our analysts has to dig a whole lot deeper to find the real drivers of the market.
So to get to that why, they use a couple of really powerful statistical tools. First, you have correlation. That just tells you if two things, say the price of crude oil and the price of plastic, tend to move together. But then you have regression, and that goes a huge step further. It actually quantifies how they move together, which lets you use one to help predict the other. But, and this is a huge but, there's a golden rule that every good analyst lives by. Just because two things are linked statistically does not mean one causes the other. You always have to validate any statistical finding with real-world industry knowledge and just plain old common sense before you use it to make a big decision.
This is where regression becomes a superpower. It lets the analyst answer these very specific, very tangible questions. By crunching the historical data, they can turn a vague worry, oh no, oil prices are up, into a precise number the company can then use for financial planning or its hedging strategy. It's a game changer. All right, so with a really solid quantified grip on the past, our analyst's journey now turns toward the future. But listen, this isn't about gazing into a crystal ball and trying to find one single perfect prediction. Nope, it's about getting ready for many possible futures.
And I love this idea. The goal here is not to be right, it's to be prepared.
Good strategic forecasting is all about stress testing your plans against a whole range of different outcomes. It's how you avoid making a billion-dollar mistake by knowing how your strategy holds up if the future turns out to be different than what you expected.
And a two-variable data table like this is the perfect tool for that. The analyst can model all sorts of outcomes based on combinations of key drivers, things like oil prices and economic growth. This doesn't give you one simple answer. It shows you the full spectrum of possibilities that you need to be ready for.
And this brings us to it, the climax of our analyst journey. All of the benchmarking, the data storytelling, the regression analysis, the scenario planning, everything we've talked about, it all comes together to support one single, incredibly high-stakes decision.
And you know what? The final output isn't some 100-page report that nobody's going to read. It's a clean, one-slide summary with a clear, actionable recommendation. In this case, defer major capital spending, or CapEx, by 18 months. And the most important part is that it is a defensible recommendation born from this entire analytical framework we just walked through. And that is the ultimate payoff of having a process like this. It completely transforms market analysis from this reactive, confusing exercise into a real source of competitive advantage. It builds confidence and makes sure that everyone, from the analyst to the CEO, is making decisions based on the same rigorous logic. So, at the end of the day, the crucial takeaway is this. Following this journey lets an organization answer this one final, critical question. The whole point of the process is to move away from uncertainty and guesswork and toward making these massive decisions on a solid foundation of data, clarity, and most of all, confidence.